whatever, you know.
The listeners can still be listening right now, right?
No, at this point, nobody thinks we're really good at this, right?
You know, I was
think
speaking
you're
of not really
really
good.
good at
I was really concerned we were going to lose the
Yeah,
countdown
Oh,
clock.
I know.
I'm looking
freaking out.
around. I'm like, okay, my watch is outside the studio.
Yeah.
What are we
Yeah.
gonna?
For-
We need an
for-
alternate.
for
we
our
need an alternate
listeners.
just in
What,
case.
another monitor up there with a different
The-
laptop going,
No,
or what's the
something like her where she
Grace's
can.
watch?
There
Where
you
you can
go.
be.
I
What
mean,
would
'cause
you
we
have
could-
done? Give me like a big.
For the record,
Just so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We have these countdown monitors in the room where we've got a 2850 countdown going on.
And
so
like
we
all
know when we're going.
nonprofits, they're cheap.
And these
Aw.
monitors, like during the whole day, they've been just blacking out for a second, and then they come back online, which I don't care.
this time it
But
blacked
they
out
were
for like 10 seconds.
staying blacked out, and I'm like, oh, and
And-
we only have like a minute left, and
We were
Just
looking at it.
just for the web
That was
stream,
good.
just because it's funky and nerd information. The monitors are powered by a laptop that's hidden behind one of our soundboards.
Which is really
and
awesome.
the keyboard is a remote keyboard that I have in front of me, and it seemed like every time I moved I didn't know if it was my headphone cable that was making it.
Or you're just imagining a
Yeah,
connection.
I was like, am I causing interference with the monitors? But
okay, let's get into web exclusive. We've got some
Oh,
good
sure.
comments. I want
Yes.
to respond
I
to
forgot
them.
we're not done.
We're not done. Okay,
No, we're
we've
just
we've
getting
done our
started.
30 seconds of video rolling, so now let's go back. So let's get to the computer. Andrew made a great comment, which I didn't see, but he's kind of making the same point that I was trying to make at the during the last 8 seconds of the show. Andrew was asking the question, would it derail the conversation from abortion, and would you spend an unnecessary amount of time trying to defend yourself? And I think sometimes,
That's a good question.
not always, but sometimes, and it's the same thing with using the word genocide.
Yeah.
And
we discovered that often derails.
And we've had that. I've had that derailed. Now I think Steve Wagner makes a good point that even though most people's definition of the word genocide, it doesn't fit necessarily with abortion, but his point is that words change meaning over time, and abortion should be counted as genocide, so they use it. However, I've had conversations completely derailed with people because of that
We're not here to
term.
fight about the word
And so
genocide.
I be careful. I'm just going to say
Yeah.
be careful using that word, and it's a matter
I tend
of
to be a fan of the easier route. What's going to get me through, not that I'm trying to get through conversations quick necessarily, even though that is a struggle with me, but if there's an easier way to go about the same goal, if you kind of can feel or reason out that maybe you need to say, okay, let's just forget about genocide, or how about this? Can we at least agree that it's killing? And go from there. How do we feel about mass killing?
Go back to common ground,
Yeah.
and then you can get into these because a lot of times if they feel like you're just trying to use the Holocaust or slavery as this emotional, like I'm trying to make you pro-life because I'm appealing to this this atrocity. A lot of people, especially on college campuses, are turned off by that. Doesn't mean the comparison is wrong.
Well, because for the majority of people it works.
I
would say.
I haven't. It could be a further controversy on the thought. When I've used, and most of the time that I'm engaging in these discussions, I do have the Justice for All display with us, which has the word genocide written on it, and even when I'm not in front of a display, sometimes you can actually build common ground when they challenge you on the definition by admitting that maybe you messed it up. Hey, I never thought maybe it isn't. Now let me then ask you, does abortion have any impact on us? Maybe, okay, because to me it was like, oh, genocide, yeah, maybe if it's genocide, maybe it isn't genocide, then does it still have an impact on us?
Yeah.
And now so you're willing to concede the point that I'm right about the genocide? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you, let's flesh this out. Maybe abortion doesn't have any impact on us because it's not genocide. And what that lends us to...
Interesting choice with impact.
Well, the question is genocide the only form of injustice that we should be addressing here? And does abortion, maybe abortion doesn't fall into the category of genocide, but should we still be talking about it?
Are there other wrongs besides genocide? to some
Yes.
degree?
Yes.
I would be careful with the word impact because to me
you definitely do.
it indicates some kind of instrumental value. If something has an impact on society, I don't know. To me, that seems like a loaded term that I might avoid just to not go down that road.
Right.
Now, if you can use it and it works, without creating a derailing effect like we've been talking about.
Right.
I would use it. I mean, if I was going to be in a discussion, I would use it in the sense: do murders in a neighborhood have an impact on that neighborhood? Okay, is it because it's causing some? No, it's because people are dying.
Okay.
You got to address that.
Right.
That's an impact
Right.
you got to deal with.
So,
Just so you guys know, my dad linked to a really good article. I've read this article before. I'm not going to try to just really sum it up because I wouldn't do it justice. But it's at thegospelcoalition.org, and I'll post it in the show notes when we actually publish this episode. But there's a really good article. Okay, I am summing it up, but just from a guy who's making the case that you want to be really careful when you in setting the context before you start even talking about slavery, especially when white people do it. Was basically if I remember right, that was the point he was making.
Me.
There you go. Okay, let real quick before the last thing I'm going to do before we end the was is we did get a great question.
We've got to answer Katie's question.
We got to answer Katie's question.
Katie, thanks for waiting.
Katie's question specifically, I quote, was, is there a statistical link showing an increase in attempted suicides by post-abortive women? Now, so between the shows, while you guys were eating, this is what I was
Josh doesn't
Googling.
take dinner breaks.
I'm always, I'll just say, I am always cautious whenever I'm looking at studies that have to do with effects of abortion on post-abortive women, because many of the studies I've seen are not necessarily don't include a big enough sample size of people to really say as much as it's not like they've
not
got.
Not that their data is invalid, but that it's difficult to validate.
Yeah, to validate. Thank you. You said it better than I did. To keep doing that. So,
Bravo.
So.
I'm good at summarizing.
But I did go ahead and take a look.
all.
I took a look at David Reardon's website. David Reardon is the guy who's doing most of the research on post-abortive women. He's in the pro-life movement. His website, just so people know, is afterabortion.org. And I just looked up suicide, and I had found a quote from David Reardon's in one of his articles. His quote was, compared to women who have abortions in adulthood, teens who abort are 2 to 4 times more likely to commit suicide. And then he had a source.
That's compared to older women who also have abortions?
Exactly.
Okay.
Compared to adult women who have abortions, teens who abort are 2 to 4 times more likely to commit suicide than the adult women. Okay, so then he had a source. So my thing is to look at the source. And it took me a little while to find something, but I found a study that was published in the British Medical Journal in 1996. The study is by, or the lead researcher was Micah Gisler, and the study is the name of the study was Suicides After Pregnancy in Finland, 1987 through 94. This was published in the British Medical Journal in 1996. So I'm just going to basically sum up what they learned. The way they did this study was, because I want to see, is this something where they found 20 people committed suicide and now they're trying to say something? No, they were able to get from the Register of Death Certificates information on all deaths of women of childbearing age from 1987 through 94 that live in Finland, which is almost 10,000 women. And then they were able to extract information, and I think they went to several different sources, but they extracted information about these women. Of the women who had died, there's 9,100 women that had, or almost 9,200 women that died of childbearing age. 15% of them had committed suicide, which is 1,347. So we're still talking about, I think, statistically significant.
Yeah.
And so one of the things they analyzed was of the women that had suicides, had those women given birth, how many of them had a natural miscarriage, and how many of them had had
that's interesting. They looked at that as well.
And thank you. And how many of them had an induced abortion. And here is the conclusion that they found. They said suicides are more common after a miscarriage, and especially after an induced abortion than in the general population. They go on to say, this is the actual quote, when you look at the summary, this is what they say. The increased risk of suicide after an induced abortion indicates either common risk factors for both or harmful effects of induced abortion on mental health.
Interesting.
So I would say, I think that's good enough for me, who's kind of pretty cautious about what I would say that's enough to say that there is a statistic. At least studies show that there's good reason to think that there might be an increased risk of suicide of women having abortions.
That's.
However, what am I going to say next, Liz?
There's more research to be done. It needs to be newer research. We need to keep looking.
And
that doesn't make abortion right or wrong.
Thank you.
I'm like, what are the most common things we say?
High five. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well put.
Here's
That's a good point.
I'm not going to do a cold do because we need to stop. But I'll just say, I think facts like this are much more effective if you're a sidewalk counselor in front of an abortion facility talking to women who are abortion vulnerable than if you're on a college campus with us and Justice for All talking with a pro-choice person in a logical debate about whether abortion is morally wrong.
That's true.
Just because women commit suicide from abortion doesn't make it morally wrong, because
It is concerning, though.
Yeah.
I mean, women, there are other things that may cause women to have a higher. It doesn't mean it's wrong.
One of the things you pointed out, the difference between a sidewalk counseling situation and a philosophical or logical discussion on a college campus. I think the validation of using emotional arguments when at a college or when at a sidewalk counseling situation, it can be wrapped up in the fact that on all sides of the issue, people will say that is a very emotionally sensitive state, which means that emotion is at play, and it somewhat validates the point of, all right, they're concerned about their emotion after whatever decision they make. Okay, well then we can talk about the emotional arguments that are at play there.
They're probably very concerned about themselves.
Yeah.
If you're about to do something and you realize it could have a risk to yourself, you're likely to be concerned.
Okay. Thank you to everybody for listening. It's been really fun. I think it certainly adds a new dynamic to the show.